Okay, so welcome back. Let's jump into the next one. All about fiber. Healthy gut, healthy mind, healthy body. We've all probably heard a lot of information about gut health and how fiber is incredibly important to our diet, especially as vegans. We probably hear a lot more about that than the general population. And we're probably the ones that need to hear about it at least because our diets, generally, if they're going to be whole food, plant-based, are going to be incredibly high in fiber as a natural result. So it's not really something we have to worry too much about. But I did want to give you some information around why fiber is important. We're not going to dive too far into gut health because that's a topic for another in-depth discussion. But we're going to talk about fiber and some of the main benefits here. So what is it and why does it matter? So it's the indigestible portion derived from plants. So we know that fiber is only found in plants. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to get a lot of it, right? It helps maintain bowel health. So through the production of short-chain fatty acids, things like butyrate and a whole bunch of these other things that are produced when we ingest fiber. And it moves through into that large intestine, and gases are produced as a byproduct. And the microbiome, the bacteria in the gut are basically using these as fuel, right? Using fiber as fuel and producing short-chain fatty acids, which have a whole whole bunch of beneficial downstream effects on our health and our mood and all of these different aspects of gut health. And it helps to control blood sugar. So you can see in this graph here, we have blood sugar level and its responses to three different versions of carbohydrate. So in the blue line there, you have pure glucose. So we're talking basically table sugar. And then in the green line there, you have a high GI rice, for example, like a white rice. And in the red, or the orange, we have a low GI rice, such as a brown rice. So it tends to be that people will opt for, saying that brown rice is healthier than a white rice. And there is some truth to that. And basically the difference between these different spikes here in blood glucose after eating, so you can see the time, 2 hours there. So directly after eating, you have these spikes. And as you can see with pure glucose, it spikes really high and drops off relatively quickly. The white rice spikes a little higher than the brown rice. They drop off around the same rate. And now generally the difference between that is the fiber content of this food. Pure glucose, no fiber. White rice, a little bit of fiber. Brown rice, a lot more fiber, right? So it slows that digestion time down a little bit and controls our blood sugar levels a little bit as well. And then obviously this can also be impacted by glycemic load, a little bit different from glycemic index, which is basically the GI, the glycemic index, and the actual total number of carbohydrates we're ingesting. So you're likely going to be ingesting less carbohydrates if you're eating brown rice than if you were eating pure glucose, right? Brown rice, higher satiety, higher volume. You're not going to eat as much as you could eat of, say, a candy or a sugar beverage or something like that. So fiber is a really big, important part of controlling blood sugar levels, which is going to be really beneficial for our metabolic health. So how sugar reacts within the body and how it is basically ingested into the different tissues and cells that are going to be able to utilize it. So we want good blood glucose control, and fiber is going to help with that. Added low density volume to the diet. So fiber adds that low density volume, like we've talked about in previous presentations, about getting lots of low calorie density meals in, and so high fiber foods are going to be those low calorie density foods as well. And with fiber, we only have 2 calories per gram. So it's a lot lower in calories than your other macronutrients, your proteins, carbs, and fats, and alcohol. So great option there. So focusing on fiber to increase volume of the meals. The more fiber, the more full you'll feel. Pretty simple, easy as that. So when you're looking at products, try to opt for those high fiber products, and also just be aware of the transitioning time as well. So if you're new to eating lots of high fiber, maybe you're coming from a diet that's been predominantly processed, Western style diet, and you start including a whole bunch of whole foods and lots of high fiber foods, then be aware there might be a bit of a transitioning period there that you might want to actually eat a little bit more white rice than brown rice, for example, just because we know the fiber content of brown is going to be really high, and we don't want to include too much at once, just because we might have some of those negative effects of gas and bloating and things like this. So where do we get our fiber? Just a quick little infographic here showing some of the best sources of fiber in our diet. Legumes are pretty much the king of fiber. When we look at legumes here, although you see flaxseed at 27 grams, this is per 100 grams. So you're not going to be eating 100 grams of flaxseed. You're going to be eating about 20 grams. With legumes, you might actually eat 100 grams of legumes. So that will give you 5 grams of fiber right there. Oats, 4 grams of fiber per 100 grams. Whole wheat bread is 8 per 100 grams. So whole wheat bread is also a very good option. You'll see a lot of your breads in the supermarket have a very high fiber to them. Brown rice at 7 grams for 100 grams, so a really big hit there. And most of the time you would be eating around 100 grams of brown rice in a meal. Wheat Bix, if you were in the I guess the Commonwealth countries, England, Australia, New Zealand, we all know about Wheat Bix. 11 grams of fiber per 100 grams. I believe it's 4 grams of fiber per 2 Wheat Bix, so that's pretty good. And then all of your greens, broccoli, spinach, green beans, Brussels sprouts, 2 to 4 grams of fiber per 100 grams. So you want to include a lot of greens. And other berries such as blueberries also surprisingly have a decent amount of fiber. So these are some really good go-tos for increasing fiber in your diet, but there's a whole lot more, and basically it just comes back to eating a lot of variety, eat a lot of whole foods, and you'll be covering your bases there. Recommended fiber intakes, we want to be getting upwards of 30 grams per day if possible. Again, this becomes harder on a lower calorie diet because we're not eating as much food. The UK average consumption is less than 15 grams per day. So we're talking about those kind of more Western style diets. The standard Western style diet is horrendous at getting fiber into the diet, and it's one of those nutrients that a lot of people are deficient in. And what that does is it means that we're eating far more calorically dense, hyper palatable foods. We're not maintaining good gut health. We're not controlling blood sugar levels, and it just means that we're just an overall a less healthy population. As soon as we see fiber increase, we see longevity increase, we see reductions in multiple disease risks. So it's one of those things that if you've got friends and family around you, try to encourage them to include more fiber in their diets. Data suggests an increase of at least 28 grams per day for females and 38 grams for males can reduce risk of chronic disease, right? So even if you can get over 30 grams a day is a great spot to be in. Aim for upwards of 30 grams per day, or as a minimum, another suggestion is basically aiming for 14 grams per 1,000 kilograms, 1,000 calories within your diet. So if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, you can, target around 28 grams, and upwards of there, depending on your intake. Now, as I've mentioned, it's much more challenging when you're in a lower calorie phase. You don't have as much food coming in. You might not be able to include as much of those carbohydrate dense foods as you'd like to. For example, your oats and your breads and your rices. So it does become a little bit harder to get that fiber up, but it's definitely not it's doable. It's not super hard, and you might have just a slightly lower fiber intake for an 8-week fat loss phase, and then as you come back to maintenance intake, your fiber will increase again. So a nice short one for you today. Increasing fiber intake has multiple benefits on human health. There's no need to track this religiously. However, making an effort to ensure high fiber foods are present in each meal to individual tolerance, like we chatted about in terms of if you are struggling with some of the symptoms of high fiber, gassing, bloating, and things like that. It's a smart move for fat loss and overall health. So go ahead, grab a plate like this. You got a whole bunch of fiber in there. You got your lentil sprouts. Tempeh is another great fiber choice that I didn't mention. Tempeh and tofu. You got your legumes in there. Some fermented veggies and the sauerkraut, also very good for the gut. And some green peas there. So hugely a high fiber meal. Go get some of that in you, and you'll be off to a great start.